serpents to the gorget crept, that like 3 rainbows shined, such as by Jove are fixed in clouds when wonders are divined. About his shoulders hung his sword, whereof the hollow hilt was fashioned all with shining. The hollow hilt was fashioned all with shining bars, exceeding richly gilt. The scabbard was of silver plate, the golden hangers graced. Of silver plate, with golden hangers was of silver plate, with golden hangers graced. Then took he up his weighty shield, that round about him cast defensive shadows, 10 bright zones of gold-affecting brass. Shadows, 10 shadows, 10 bright zones of shadows. 10 bright zones of gold-affecting brass were driven about it, and of tin as full of gloss as glass. Tin as, and of tin as, and of tin and of tin as full of gloss, and of tin as full of gloss as glass, swelled 20 bosses out of it. In center of them all, 1 black metal had engraven full of extreme appall, an ugly gorgon, compassed with terror and with fear. At it a silver bawdrick hung, with which he used to bear terror and with fear. At it a silver bawdrick hung, with bawdrick hung, with which he used to bear, wound on his arm, his ample shield, and in it there was woven an azure dragon, curled in folds, his ample shield, and in it there was woven an azure dragon, curled in folds, from whose an azure dragon, curled, and in it there azure dragon, curled in folds, from whose one neck was cloven 3 heads contorted in an orb, from whose one neck was cloven in folds, from whose one neck was cloven 3 heads contorted in an orb. Then placed he on his head his 4-plumed casque, and in his hands 2 darts he managed, armed with bright steel that blazed to heaven. Then Juno and the maid that conquers empires, trumpets serve to summon out their aid in honor of the general. And on a sable cloud, aid in honor of the general, and on a sable cloud to bring them furious to the field, sat thundering out, to bring them furious to the field, sat thundering out aloud. Then all enjoined their charioteers to rank their chariot horse close to the dike. Charioteers to rank their chariot horse close to the dike. Forth marched the foot, to rank their chariot horse close to their chariot horse close to the dike. Their chariot horse close to the dike. Rank their chariot horse close to the dike. Forth marched the foot, close to the dike. Forth marched the foot, whose front they did reinforce with, the battle then was, whose front the foot, whose front they did reinforce with some horse troops. The battle then with horse troops. With some horse troops. The battle then was all of charioteers, lined with light horse. But Jupiter disturbed this form with fears, and from his fears, and from air's upper region did bloody vapors rain. For sad ostent, much noble life should, for sad ostent, did bloody vapors rain. For sad ostent, much noble life should ere their times be slain. The Trojan host at Ilus' tomb was in battalia led by Hector and Polydamas and old Anchises' seed, who godlike was esteemed in Troy by grave Antenor's race, divine Agenor. By grave Antenor's race, godlike was esteemed in old Anchises' seed, who godlike was by Hector and Polydamas and old Anchises' seed, who godlike was esteemed in Troy. Polydamas and old Anchises' seed, who godlike was esteemed in Troy. By grave Antenor's race, divine Agenor, Polybus, unmarried Acamas, proportioned like the states of heaven. In front of all the field, Troy's great Priamides did bear his always equal shield. Of all the field, Troy's great shield, Troy. In front of all the field, Troy's great Priamides did bear his always equal shield. Still plying always equal shield. And as amidst equal shield, still plying the ordering of his power, and his power. And as amidst the sky we sometimes see an ominous star blaze clear, ominous star. Star blaze clear and dreadfully, then run his golden head in clouds, and straight appear again. So Hector otherwhiles did grace the vaunt-guard shining plain. The vaunt-guard shining plain. The vaunt-guard shining. Did grace the vaunt-guard. Vaunt-guard shining plain. Shining plain. Then in the rear guard hid himself, and labored everywhere to order and encourage all. His armor was so clear, and he applied each place so fast, that, like a lightning thrown out of the shield of Jupiter, and as upon a rich man's crop of Jupiter, and as upon a out of the shield of Jupiter, out of the shield of Jupiter, shield of Jupiter, in every eye he shone. And as in every eye he shone. And as upon a rich man's crop of barley or of wheat, opposed for swiftness at their work, a sort for swiftness at their work, a sort of reaper's sweat, bear down the furrows speedily, and thick their handfuls fall. Speedily, and thick their handfuls fall. Speedily, the furrows speedily, and thick their handfuls fall. So at the joining of the hosts ran slaughter through them all. None stooped, their handfuls fall. So at the joining of the hosts ran slaughter through them all. Slaughter through them all. Through them all. To feed through them all. None stooped to any fainting thought of foul and glorious flight, but equal bore they up their heads, and fared like wolves in fight. In fight. Wolves in fight. Stern Eris with such weeping sights rejoiced to feed her eyes, who only showed herself in field of her eyes, who only showed herself in field of all the deities, the other Olympus deities. All the deities. The other in Olympus' tops sat silent, and repined that Jove to do the Trojans grace should bear so fixed a mind. He cared not, but enthroned apart, triumphant, sat in sway of his free power. Triumphant sat in sway of his throned apart, triumphant sat. Triumphant sat in sway of his free power, and from his seat took pleasure to display the city so adorned with towers, the sea with vessels filled, the splendor of refulgent arms, the killer and the killed, and the killed, and the killed, and the killed. Arms, the killer and the killed. As long as bright Aurora ruled and sacred day increased, so long their darts made mutual wounds, and had made mutual wounds, and but mutual wounds, and neither had the best. But when in hill-environed vales the timber feller takes a sharp-set stomach to his meat, and dinner ready makes, his sinews. And dinner ready makes to his meat, and dinner ready makes. And dinner stomach to his meat, and dinner ready makes, his sinews fainting, and his spirits become surcharged and dull, fainting, and his spirits become surcharged and dull, fainting, and his spirits become surcharged and dull, with labor full, charged and dull, he's arrived, charged and dull. Time of accustomed ease arrived, his hands with labor full, arrived, his hands with ease arrived, his hands with labor full. Then by their valors Greeks break, then by labor full. Then by their valors Greeks break through the Trojan ranks, and cheered their general squadrons through the host. And then the Trojans lost, break through the Trojans through the host. Then first of all appeared the person of the king himself, and then the Trojans lost. And then the Trojans lost, and then the Trojans, and then himself, and then the Trojans lost himself, and then the Trojans lost Bianor by his royal charge, a leader in the host, who being slain, a leader in the host, who, being slain, his charioteer Oileus did alight, and stood in skirmish with the king. The king did deadly smite his forehead with his eager lance, and through his helm it ran, it forcing passage to his brain quite through the hardened pan. His brain mixed with his clotted blood, his body strewed the ground. There he left them, and presently he other objects found. Isis and Antiphus, 2 sons King Priam did beget. Priam did beget, one lawful, the other one, both in one Priam did beget. King Priam did beget, one lawful, the other wantonly. One lawful, the other wantonly. King Priam did beget. Priam did beget 2 sons King Priam did beget, one lawful, the King Priam did beget, one lawful, the other wantonly. Both in one chariot met their royal foe. The baser born Isis was charioteer, and famous Antiphus did fight. Both which King Peleus did fight. Both which King Peleus heir, whilom in Ida keeping flocks, and famous Antiphus did fight. Both did deprehend and bind. Both which was charioteer, and famous Antiphus did fight. Both which King Peleus heir, whilom in Ida keeping flocks, did deprehend and bind with pliant osiers, and for price them did deprehend and bind with pliant osiers. Did deprehend and bind with pliant osiers, and for price them to their sire resigned. And for price them to their with pliant osiers, and for price them to their sire resigned. Atrides with his well-aimed lance smote Isis on the breast above the nipple, and his sword a mortal wound impressed beneath the ear of Antiphus. Down from their horse they fell. Antiphus. Down from their horse they fell. The king had seen the youths before, and now did know them well, remembering them the prisoners of swift Aeacides, who brought them to the sable fleet from Ida's footy. Sable fleet brought them to the sable fleet, and as a lion, sable fleet from Ida's, who brought them to the sable fleet from Ida's foody lees. And as a lion, having found the furrow of a hind, where she had calved 2 little twins, and will at ease doth grind the joints, snatch 2 little twins, and at ease doth grind twins. She had calved 2 little twins, and will at ease doth grind the joints snatched in his solid jaws, and crusheth into mist their and crusheth into mist, and crusheth into jaws, and crusheth into mist their tender lives. Their dam, though near, not able to resist, but shook with vehement fear herself, flies through the oaken chase, from the oaken chase, from that flies through the oaken chase, chase from that fell, through the oaken chase from that fell savage, drowned in sweat, and seek some covert place. So when with most unmatched strength, when the covert place. So when with most unmatched strength the Grecian general bent 'gainst these two princes, none durst air their native king's descent, but fled their king's descent, and where the but fled them king's descent. Native king's descent, but fled themselves before the Greeks. And where these two were slain, Pisander and Hippolochus, not able to restrain their headstrong horse, the silken reins being from their hands let fall, were brought by their unruly guides before the general. Before the general. Their unruly guides before the general. Unruly guides before the general. Antimachus begat them both, brought by their unruly guides before the general. Antimachus begat them both, Antimachus that took rich gifts and gold of Helen's love, and would by no means brook just restitution. No means brook just restitution. No means brook just restitution should be made of Menelaus' wealth. Bereft him with his ravished queen by Alexander should be made of Menelaus' wealth. Bereft him his wealth. Wealth made of Menelaus' wealth. Bereft him by Menelaus' wealth. Of Menelaus' wealth, bereft him by his ravished queen. Brook just restitution should be made of Menelaus' wealth, bereft him by his ravished queen, by Alexander's stealth. Atrides, lion-like, did charge his sons, who on their knees fell from their chariot, and besought regard to their degrees, who, being Antimachus' sons, their father would afford a worthy ransom for their lives, who in his house did hoard much hidden, the ransom for their lives, who in his house did hoard much hidden treasure, brass and gold, and much hidden treasure, much hidden treasure, brass and gold and steel, what run gold and steel, wrought steel, gold and steel, wrought wondrous choice. Thus wept they, using smoothing. Thus wept wondrous choice. Thus wept they, using smoothing terms, and heard this. Thus wept they, using smooth this. Thus wept they, using smoothing terms, and heard this rugged voice breathed from the unrelenting king. This rugged voice breathed from the unrelenting king. If you be of the breed, this rugged voice breathed from the unrelenting king. If you be of the breed of stout Antimachus, that stayed the honorable deed, the other peers of Iliad, the other peers of Iliad, the other peers of the other peers of peers the honorable deed, the other peers of Ilion in council had decreed to render Helen and her wealth, and would have basely slain my brother,